Okay, everyone, welcome to episode number 20. This is an anniversary episode, as we were speaking with our guest up until now, of the podcast with a brilliant name in the world of presentations with 356 Labs. Number 20, anniversary, and that's why maybe, I don't know, we have a guest today. This time, the first guest that we had was covering the topic of body language. This time, we are not, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Ciprian, but we're not talking that much about body language today, right?
We are discussing just about presentations in general, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So today with us is someone who I think we know each other from the IT Camp conference in Cluj, Romania, right? It's not before that.
No, we met there 3 years ago.
3 years ago. So we know each other with Ciprian Sorlea. I think I had that.
Yes, it's correct.
Right. Correct. And I decided to kind of invite you because you decided, based on what you saw at conferences from some speakers also in IT Camp, to kind of move also to the presentation world. That was not your world also before that, like before 3 years ago, or not?
No, so you're right. The fact that people have to stand me on stages in public speaking now is partially because of you. 3 years ago, actually, 3 years ago. No.
There was also one more person, especially.
Yeah, actually, there were 3 persons responsible for that. The first one was you, because I saw your presentations, and it definitely changed the way I look at presentations and the way I build my presentations. And then there was Peter Lissen, which you also know from IT Camp, a tremendous public speaker. And I loved his way of presenting. I loved his storytelling capabilities. I figured I can also tell stories, so I should definitely try to do that. Yeah. And then the third responsible for that is Ovidiu Mățan, who organizes another conference in Cluj. It's called IT Days, and he was the one that challenged me to go on stage as a public speaker in his conference. So three person responsible for something that I ended up loving. Talking and presenting on the stage. Yes.
Yeah, and I believe we should have the other 2 guys on that podcast at some point too, especially Peter, because I don't know the third inspirational person in your case, but I know Peter, and he really is a really wow, what a language. He really is a great speaker. So maybe I think he will accept if I invite him, maybe.
Absolutely. He also has great presentations, by the way. So I'm sure that he will have a lot of saying into this.
Okay. Yeah. You mentioned a little bit about how it all started, but there was a bit about what you do on a daily basis, because you also have quite an interesting day to day. Like, you have a very interesting life, let's say.
So the interesting part, living the loving family and all that. Probably the interesting part you refer to is the professional part, where I'm CTO
in this case.
Yeah, I'm the CTO of Nordlogic Software. It's a product development company based in Cluj. We also have offices in another Romanian city called Oradea, but we also have an office in Seattle, a small office there.
Really?
We do product development. We work with companies from all over the world, mainly UK and US. But we also have customers in Asia. We work with customers in Middle East. We cover the rest of the Europe or European Union as well. Besides Nordlogic, I'm also CTO at 2 startups. One I co-founded, and the other is a spin-off from Nordlogic. It's an interesting professional life, so to speak. I get to work with incredible talents, with incredible people, and I love almost every single thing that I do. The things that I don't love is usually a really small percentage, and it's probably some of the routine stuff that somebody gets to, has to do. But everything else is amazing. And, working with technology and with people is, the stuff that I love the most.
Yeah. So what is two-part question here? So what is in the life and what is in the head of a CTO? You have been CTO for the last, at least 5 years, right?
5 years. I've been the CTO of Nordlogic.
Yeah.
There is a lot of stuff going through my head.
So for example, many people chase those C-level positions, C-level titles. So once they get it, what should they expect, especially technical people? Because I'm sure that I was in the IT field before. Potentially that will reach to some other IT people because of you and the people around you. So what is it to be a CTO? What are the responsibilities of a role like that?
Well, with this kind of role, people have a lot of expectations, both in the company that you're employee of, but also in the companies that you work with or the people you interact. Right? Depends from company to company and people. Person to person, but usually people have really high expectations from a CTO when it comes to experience, when it comes to know-how, when it comes to many things. For me, this wasn't necessarily a problem, even though I'm always aware that I don't know enough, that I need to learn more, that I need to do more research, and I should know more than I do today. But I took that as a challenge, and whenever I was in a situation when customers or even my colleagues demanded stuff from me that I wasn't sure about, it was a really good opportunity to understand where I should develop myself, what kind of skills I should extend myself with. And this is both, a challenge, but it's also a tremendous opportunity for growth. And I've taken this responsibility in Nordlogic and opportunity without blinking, and in the additional startups. And I know it's a decision I will never go back to. I will always stick to this because it's a tremendous opportunity, and it's basically allowing me to do what I want. Now, to be more pragmatic or more particular, I believe that from let's say a C-level position, people expect to get into a room with you or with somebody at that level or that role and to go out with answers. But I usually try to also flip things around. And sometimes I try to either to get them out of the room with answers or to get out of the room with more questions than they came with, because both of them are equally valuable for for the other party, so to speak. Yeah.
Well, that is kind of quite extensive, let's say, description of what you do. Once we have covered that one, you in that role, where are presentations in all of that? Speaking in a presentation related podcast, where are presentations fitting in all of that?
Okay. So I think I can map presentations into almost every single thing that I do. Meaning that I do internal trainings, for instance. I have workshops with my colleagues, with our employees, but I also do external trainings and workshops with various organizations and companies from Europe, UK. It's funny to say Europe and UK, because up till recently it was just Europe. I'm not going to get into that, but basically, I'll just say that I do trainings and workshops with people from all over, including our own company. Yeah. And that usually implies a presentation support, right? So you have a couple of slides that are going to be used as a just as a support for what you're presenting. Yeah. Now, I also do, like I said, public speaking. So, of course, I almost all the time I have a lot of, not a lot, but I have slides that accompany the presentation and the stuff that I'm presenting. Yeah. But then I also have, various meetings with our, middle management, with my colleagues, the CEO and the operational officer. And sometimes I build presentations in order to better present some stuff that I want, whether it's a strategic direction or just some ideas that I have. Usually I build a couple of slides to help me, to guide me through the stuff. And then there is I also do a lot of business development, and as part of that, sales, I get to meet customers. Yes, sales, pre-sales, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And as part of that, I use presentations, to pitch a specific idea to a customer, to pitch a specific, proposal, and also I use slides these days, even to make the final commercial proposals, because slides can be built in a way that are really easy to pass some information in a more digestible way than just Word documents or long PDFs. It's a different thing. Now a lot of stuff depends on who receives the presentation and what is the technical level of that person. But I believe that I don't think I can do anything today without at some point, sooner or later, building a presentation for somebody. So it's really a core and central part of what I do.
And I also remember that you mentioned that you saw something that was presented at IT Camp, or that we discussed in one of the editions of the IT Camp conference in Romania, which, by the way, is a tremendous conference, and everyone who is able to go there, I believe you also recommend it. I'm highly, highly recommending that event. You mentioned that you used something from what you heard or learned or saw during a presentation or one of our discussions, and you used it with a client and you won the client. Was it like...
Yeah, so actually, I built a presentation for that particular conference.
Okay. For the IT Camp, you mean?
Yes. Okay. No, actually, sorry. It was about I had the presentation that I built for IT Days, the other event, the one that Ovidiu is organizing. So I had my IT Days presentation. Yeah, and I traveled with my CEO to a customer premise. We discussed, and as part of the conversation, I brought the idea that, hey, I have a couple of slides that can support our conversation. I can walk you through them if you want. And because the slides were built mainly with pictures and very or let's say a small amount of words, I was able to present. I was able to kind of pivot a presentation that was built for developers to a presentation that was designed, or let's say meant, for executives, because that presentation was in front of some executives. And the idea was that ultimately the same message was conveyed differently, supported by the same set of slides, but the story was slightly adjusted for the audience.
Yeah. By the way, that shows you that you have done some incredible progress for the last few years when we talk about presentations, because if you really think about it, people who see something like this happen in real time, like when people see the speaker or the trainer or the mentor adapting in real time and changing his whole message to the specific audience that's in front of them, it's quite impressive. And people are like really, really impressed when they see it. And most of the times they associate that with someone who is very experienced, not just in what they do, but also in presentations. That's just... I don't know whether or not someone told you that before, but I hear that very, very often, because we more or less live and breathe presentations. So discussions like that are constant. So that is quite well done there. Like quite well. The result was what? Like you won the client, or what happened?
Yes. We run the account, and we are currently, into a happy relationship with that customer. So everything
sounds great.
Yeah. Sounds great. I believe you're right, and this is ultimately what we should try to convey with every presentation, because ultimately presenting something is an act of sales, right? Back then I was doing a sale, but any presentation, whether it's internal or external, it's a training or a workshop or whatever, should be considered as a sales act. And the way I try to build my presentation goes back to one of the principles I had the first time I started to do sales in my own company many, many years ago.
Okay.
And let's say shortly, it's like listen to the customers, to what they ask you to do, understand what they really want, and deliver something in between. So to me, this is the secret of selling. You need to listen. You need to understand your audience. You need to understand your customers.
Yeah.
But then it's not always right to give them what they want or what they expect. You need to also understand what they should be receiving, right? What's their real need, and try to deliver in between. You still have something to follow through, but you need to adapt yourself to what the customer expects. Now, if you're selling just a technical presentation, if you have a technical presentation, you want to sell a technical solution, a technical idea, something, a technology. So it's still a sales process. It's still a sales, act or meeting or presentation. So you should treat it accordingly, because otherwise they will use that content in ways that you don't want, or they will not even remember that presentation. So that's why I try to build presentations in a way that throughout the conference or throughout the meeting, I try to, at least in a short time, to read the audience, understand if I should be adjusting my story and everything else, and then I use the presentations as support for that.
Yeah. So that being said, do you have like a process that you follow when you're building your talks, no matter of the talk? Like, do you have some steps that you follow that you can share, or how do you approach a presentation? Someone tells you, or you decide to do a presentation or a training. Like, what do you do?
Well, it depends a lot on what kind of presentation it is, because if it's a presentation that I build as a sales sales pitch, then I have a specific structure that I go with, and I just follow it through, try to justify the why, why are we here, why we discuss about this, and then depending on what I'm trying to sell or what I'm trying to present, I go through various points. When it's about let's say a public presentation, a public speaking, technical conference or something, I probably have the most weird process you've ever heard of. I don't usually build slides, months ago and to rehearse a lot. I don't rehearse the slides. I don't rehearse that much, too much. But instead, I try to rehearse the story. To me, presenting, a story that people can relate to I believe it's important. That's why, I got attracted into this by Peter's capability to tell a story, to really, get you into that story when he's talking. So I try to come up with a story. I try to come up with something that can be hooked, or you can get the audience hooked into. And I use the showers, the morning showers or the evening showers. I use that time to go through what I will tell. So I probably think about, various things that I could cover into my presentation for like maybe a couple of weeks. And then I have the story, right? And then all I have to do is, along with that story, to figure out things that can visually support my story. And then I add, the feeling content. And I spent some time to identify, and the tools and the links you provided a couple of years or 3 years ago, I don't know, where you could get stock photos, quality stock photos and fonts and all that helped me tremendously, because now most of my presentations are mainly, images and, like I said, just a couple of words. And getting the right content, getting the right words there, getting the right pictures that really suggest that is a significant part of the process. But that's the last thing I do. First, I try to figure out the story. What am I going to tell those people in that room? Why am I there?
So how do you brainstorm it? Do you use let's say, do you use sticky notes? Do you write ideas down in OneNote or Evernote while you're traveling? Do you use a notebook? Like what? How do you collect all of your ideas that you have?
I use Evernote for that because I have it on my Mac and I have it on my phone. So even if I get an idea while I'm in a cab or in a bus or working or in a meeting, I get the word and I'm writing it down because I want to refer to it.
The people that we train, like, use your mobile devices for note taking, because some of the ideas that you are going to have for an important presentation won't come you won't come with that in a specific time frame when you say to yourself, wait a minute, I'll now brainstorm my presentation. Sometimes the greatest ideas come in such an unexpected fashion that you have to have something to write them down. Otherwise you will forget them.
Yeah, like I said, I do a lot of my brainstorming into the shower. I don't know why, but that's when some of the ideas come to me. But it happened to me a couple of times that by the time I got out of the shower, I forgot, and it was a brilliant idea. Of course, maybe it came back later. But now, if I get an idea that I think, it should really be part of the presentation or something, I'm just getting out of the shower, writing it down, and getting back later. I'm going to have a longer shower, but at least I saved the idea. So that's the point. Yeah, you're right. This stuff hits you when you least expect it. And if you have a structured way to capture that content, and I trust, Evernote is a really trustworthy tool. I never lost any information I wrote there, so I quickly type it, and that's it. And I know I can get back to it whenever I'm going to assemble my presentation.
Same with OneNote on a PC or even on a Mac. I think both of those tools are just fantastic for note taking. I mean, our whole company is more or less based on OneNote. Like, we take notes for everything in there, and it syncs magically throughout any device that you can imagine. So I can only, I believe that Evernote is working the same way, so flawless. Like, you don't even understand when the sync happens, and everything is there when you need it. Like, it's just, it's crazy. It's crazy when you think about it, what world we are living in today compared to 10 years ago. Like, it's just... Anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, okay, so all of that leads me to probably one of the questions that I ask very often during a podcast and during a conversation with someone when we talk about presentations. You see a lot of presentations, like on a daily basis, I believe, or at least on a weekly basis. You yourself deliver a lot of presentations. Like, what do you think is the most commonly seen mistake or mistakes in the presentation field nowadays?
I think
if you have to name one or two, what would be the top one or top two things?
I think the worst thing that a presenter can do is not connecting with the audience. You might not have the best story. You might not have the best presentation skills. You might not have the best slides. But if you try to connect with the audience, you might still get something out of that. If you can try to convey a message by connecting with them. I think the worst presentation I've seen was not one that had ugly pictures, or was not one that had a lot of text. It was with another CTO, interestingly, who spent 1 hour reading the slides and looking in the ground without connecting with you. I was in the front row and I haven't seen his eyes once in a 1 hour presentation. And that was probably the worst presentation I attended in my life. I was just, it was awkward for me to leave the room because I wanted to leave the room after 5 minutes. But again, being in the first row, it was a bit awkward for me. But people from the last rows were much more fortunate, and they left quite early. I believe that's the problem number one. Not understanding, not reading, not connecting with the audience can definitely be a top no-no for presentation.
Anything else?
Then maybe the regulars trying to have too much content into a slide. I think that's also common.
Still 2019, 2020, still
yes,
it is common. Okay.
And then
anything
maybe
else?
I believe I now understand that it's a problem. I wasn't aware of that before I saw some of your workshops. that you need to have some variations in the stuff that you're presenting. So you cannot have a linear.
You mean contrasts? Yeah.
Yeah. So, for instance, if you attend a technical presentation, whatever kind of presentation, and the speaker has a linear voice that just goes on and on, same pace, same level, same pitch for 1 hour.
Yeah.
3 minutes later, you pick up your phone and you're on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, or you search on Google for something more interesting.
For sure.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that I've actually have to acknowledge that I've learned from you is that you need to introduce certain times when you add something different, or you use your maybe even your body language, your voice.
Absolutely.
You use all the tools you have at hand because you don't always have the opportunity to put videos 5 minutes every 5 minutes, or to do live coding or anything. But you use the tools that you have at hand to do something more dynamic in the presentation. And I think that's something that a lot of speakers out there don't do. They start with in one way and they end it in the same way, and people get disconnected really easily.
Yeah, the interesting part of that one is that once people see all of that, the whole concept of implementing and using contrast, or just applying and just let's call it this way so that it will be simpler. Just using contrast, meaning changes in one way or the other in the presentation, they quickly understand why some of the top presentations out there, be that Apple, Microsoft, whatever, actually work, right? Because I believe that once you see that whole concept, once you see that there are things that are called contrasts, and that you see that they're on 3 levels: content, delivery, and also emotion, and you see how they can be implemented, even in a technical talk, I believe it is really hard for someone to unsee it. Like, once you see that, it is really hard to unsee. And what's more, I often receive feedback from the people that we work with that they went to a presentation and they come back or write us an email. We saw this other person from Visa International or whatever. He was doing everything that you said. He was doing videos. He was doing slides. He was using his voice in a different way. He jumped into the crowd to just walk around the people. He was asking questions on and on and on and on and on. And once they see it, then it's really hard again to stop looking for it. And they can really quickly understand what's happening. Sometimes speakers do it unintentionally, right? They don't know that they're doing it. However, a lot of the presentations that we see that we consider the top presentations out there are really well planned, as you can imagine. And they all use that same approach, plus many others, of course, but that is like a fundamental thing that they cover. Otherwise, on the 3rd minute, imagine yourself on the Apple's keynote, and on minute number 2, you're like, okay, that's boring. Let me jump on my phone. That should not happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So final advice. Because I told you that we are going to be over time. So final advice for people who wanna, let's say you jumped into the presentation world. What would be your final advice for someone who wants to make their first step, let's say, in presentations? Like, where should they start, in your opinion? Okay,
I actually can't give you a single advice. I will give you 3. One is
here we go.
Don't use Comic Sans. Pick the right fonts and images.
Okay.
Second is something that I've learned from my daughter. Don't worry if you have to speak in front of 1,000 people or a single person. Do your best. And the third is, before you go, and present outside, present inside. Everybody has a group of, friends, colleagues, teammates. Make a presentation, try to pitch an idea internally into the company, and, acknowledge the fact that everything has a start. It's only going to get better.
Yeah, so rehearse in front of friends, colleagues, and safe you're in your safe circle. Let's call it this way.
Yeah, before I went outside, as a public speaker at conferences, I had maybe 15 years worth of doing really bad to somehow good presentations in front of colleagues and customers and others. And then I got better and better by doing that. So
yeah, by
practice makes perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you still, like, even up until today, do you kind of consume like presentation related information in the form of books, blog posts, anything, or not? It's not that big of a focus.
Yeah, so I think the last blog post I read about presentation was something on your website. I don't believe I consumed anything different than that.
Oh, okay. Well, on that note, we may end. I think that's a good way to end on that one. Okay. Yeah, we definitely need to end because we really wanted to keep that kind of like at least we were trying to push it towards 20 minutes. We didn't succeed in that one, but we have it and it's around 30. So again, thank you very much for joining us.
It was my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing all of those things that you shared. And yeah, what can I say? We'll see each other very soon again, I think.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay. Thanks, man, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Great
you
evening.
too. Bye-bye.
Bye.